It is the end of 2024, and so I thought that it would be appropriate to run through 24 of the best films of 2024. Obviously, I haven't seen every single movie that came out this year, so there will always be others that are deserving to be here, but it's going to be a long video, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, so let's just get rolling. Number 24 is a complete unknown. Admittedly, I am a big Dylan fan, and more importantly, maybe a fan of this 60s music scene. Still, I don't think that you necessarily need to head into this one as a fan. The music kind of slowly takes over, and I think regardless of your prior contextual understanding, it does still paint a fairly universal portrayal of this journey to find oneself. Number 23 is Flow. I probably wouldn't have predicted at the start of the year that an animated film with no dialogue would end up on my top of the year list, but here we are. It has some beautiful animation that will almost certainly pull at your heartstrings. There are also so many little subtle interpretations of the symbolism here, and I think, lover of cats or not, it is a wonderful, wonderful story. Number 22 is Anora. I would love to chat with director Sean Baker about this one. And while it's not in my top 5 as it is for many critics, I still love most of what was done here. Mikey, Madison, and Yura Borisov really do steal the show, and they make you maybe think differently about sex work, but also make you think about loneliness and belonging and kind of examine those themes as well. Number 21 is Eden. Eden is a solid Ron Howard picture through and through. The film is really led, cemented through its performances from Ana de Armas, through Jude Law to Sydney Sweeney and the rest of the cast. At the bare minimum, I think it's likely to elicit some Google searches about what really went down on Floriana Island, and it's actually pretty wild to think that Howard might have even toned some things down. Number 20 is Conclave. This is an absolute masterclass in tension building, and while the final payoff didn't hit quite as hard as I hoped, Edward Berger really does showcase his ability to hit every single dramatic beat. Number 19 is Janet Planet. No one seems to be talking about Janet Planet, which is quite a shame. A24 has given it a very, very quiet release, but it's worth checking out. Julianne Nicholson is wonderful, but the standout performance here comes from the very young Zoe Ziegler, who is beyond brilliant, just perfect casting as this quirky 11-year-old trying to figure out this crazy world that we're living in while she watches her mother attempt to basically do the same. Number 18 is Ghostlight. Another smaller film with very human performances. We have a super unique experience as we are watching real-life father and daughter portray father and daughter on screen. Number 17 is Porcelain War. This is a brilliant documentary that follows 3 artists, Slava, Anya, and Andrei, during the war in Ukraine. We see their art, particularly the porcelain art from Slava and Anya, juxtaposed against the backdrop of destruction and chaos and the rubble of buildings. Ultimately, it is a message for artists and the power of art and how this is something that can be used as a tool of resistance. Number 16 is In Our Blood. My favorite film from Montreal's Fantasia Fest this year In Our Blood is sadly still in distribution purgatory. While it might not do anything on a revolutionary level, it does work so well in many different ways. It comes from Pedro Cos, who is an Oscar-nominated documentary filmmaker, and he's making his narrative feature debut here. And because of that, we see a beautiful blending of genre elements with very specific, authentic nods to the documentary filmmaking process. Number 15 is Small Things Like These. Honestly, I could watch Cillian Murphy sitting in a chair and washing his hands all day. That is what a significant chunk of this film is. But seriously, it is a truly poignant picture that uses this kind of historical trauma and abuse as more of a backdrop to explore personal suffering and grief. There's beautiful cinematography and performances from start to finish. Number 14 is Daughters. Time to get the tissues out, turn on Netflix, avoid clicking on Love is Blind as much as you might want to, and watch this one instead. It's my favorite documentary of the year, and it approaches these father-daughter relationships with tremendous compassion. We see the impact of incarceration on the lives of those on the outside, and we also see these men break down their self-imposed masculine barriers while serving time on the inside. Number 13 is The Outrun. Saoirse Ronan is absolutely incredible here, which probably isn't surprising. She appears in pretty much every single frame of the film, and what's amazing about this performance is that she goes through tremendous highs and lows, but they never feel forced. We believe in her story and her struggle, and we're not really given any choice but to just hold our breath and watch a brilliant actor do her thing. Number 12 is Heretic. I might have a slight bias here, as I was lucky to interview Hugh Grant and the rest of the cast on the red carpet before the film's premiere at TIFF, but it really did exceed my expectations. It's a film that makes the most of its single location and explores religion and horror in a fairly nuanced way. And it becomes even more rewarding, at least to me, on a second watch. Number 11 is Exhibiting Forgiveness. One of my favorites from Sundance this year, Titus Kafar's semi-autobiographical debut, really hit me, and it hit me hard. The performances are some of the best of the year, and I love how it doesn't really preach about forgiveness. It doesn't tell us how we should feel, but instead it shows an individual journey of trauma, of grief, of personal growth, and it never settles for easy cliches, which I'm thankful for. Number 10 is Nosferatu. This is a Robert Eggers film. You can see his fingerprints on every single frame here. The research and, quite frankly, the love he has for folklore, you can see it in the costuming, the makeup, the set design, and just the overall vibe. And I kind of think that that's the best way to describe Eggers' work. It's the vibe. It's dark, it's beautiful, and he was definitely the right guy for the job here. Number 9 is Didi. This coming-of-age story from director Sean Wang hit me like few coming-of-age stories do. We get so many of them, and they don't always have this sort of impact. Here, for me at least, we have a pitch-perfect portrayal of high school in the early age of the internet. We have skateboarding and girls and teenage awkwardness, and we also have a very authentic depiction of this sort of cognitive dissonance when it comes to a convergence of cultures. Number 8 is Thelma. Thelma is an absolute joy, but it is also an absolute heartbreaker. It's impossible not to root for Thelma, who is played by June Squibb in her first ever lead role at 94 years old. Fred Heckinger's character, who's also wonderful, is rooted in the relationship with the director's own grandmother. In fact, the scenes shot in June's apartment were actually shot in the director Josh Margolin's grandmother's. Number 7 is Civil War. The love for Alex Garland appears to be on a steady decline ever since he hit his very high with Ex Machina back in 2014. Still, I have tremendous respect for his work, and I do feel as though Civil War deserves more praise than it is received. The choice to use a prosumer camera in the Ronin 4D allows us to kind of feel like we are in this war, and then the incorporation of photographs from Kirsten Dunst's character adds another layer. Number 6 is Sing Sing. I don't really know what A24 is doing with the marketing and distribution on this one, but what should really be one of the most talked about movies of the year has somehow faded into the background for the most part. We have a really cool project here with real former inmates from the Sing Sing Correctional Facility performing as versions of themselves. It's a clear showcase demonstration of the power of art. And yes, Coleman Domingo is amazing, which is one thing that people are talking about. Number 5 is Dune Part 2. From a technical perspective, nothing really touches Dune Part 2. Denis Villeneuve is a master of world building, and his DP cinematographer Greg Fraser deserves his flowers as well. From the score to the camera work, the special effects, it really is a spectacle of a film, and it's probably the closest thing that we have to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I'm just sitting here patiently waiting for Dune Messiah. Number 4 is A Real Pain. My favorite film from Sundance this year shows that Jesse Eisenberg is more than capable of delivering as a writer and director. His first feature was unclear, but beyond the strong work from Eisenberg here, A Real Pain brings one of the best performances as well from Kieran Culkin. He shows such a genuinely haunting portrayal of a man that most of us know. The man who is the loudest in the room, the first to make a crowd laugh, but then is somehow more broken than anyone. Number 3 is Queer. Look, I wasn't a fan of Challengers. Sue me. But that's why I am so happy to have loved Luca Guadagnino's Queer as much as I do. The third act will almost undoubtedly divide the audience, but it's where I personally fell in love with the film. This ethereal, surrealist exploration, presentation of longing will stick with me for so long, as will the performances from Craig and Drew Starkey. Number 2 is The Zone of Interest. Jonathan Glazer did something brilliant here. He sets up cameras in a way to make us, the audience, just mere observers. We watch what unfolds in a family that's either directly or indirectly serving the Nazi regime. Glazer isn't ever forceful with his messaging. He just allows us to sit in this state of constant unease. And the final moments of this film are some of the most impactful of the year. My number 1 film of the year is All of Us Strangers. I don't know what to say about this film. It broke me in a way that few films have done. In my own writing, I always find myself drawn to this delicate balance of telling a grounded human story through a surrealist lens. And Andrew Haigh struck this balance perfectly. I watched this film for the first time not long after losing my own father, and so witnessing the conversations that Andrew Scott's character has with his parents are more heart-wrenching and beautiful and profound than anything else I saw on the screen this year. It is truly, truly, truly a beautiful project, and please watch it if you haven't already. Subscribe, like, comment, do all those things. It's helpful to me. Appreciate you. I hope that your 2024 was great and have an even better 2025.
I've always felt like a stranger.